Welcome to Your Next Level Now with your host, Bob Donnell. As a human behaviorist, Bob has helped people from every walk of life reach their next level, both personally and professionally. Whether a celebrity, professional athlete, or entrepreneur, Bob has helped them align their behavior with their desired result in their life and career. This is Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell.
There he is, Mr. John Butler.
Hey, it's me.
Hey, brother, the bald guy with the red tie.
Hey,
I love that, man. Guys, John Butler is a dear friend for many, many years. And, we've met through the real estate industry, but he has, we've just shared so many different experiences of life. And John has been one of those guys that I'm a lot older than him. And a lot. Look right here. That's the proof right there.
I got gray hair going. I've reached that level, the next level.
Next level. There you go. But John has been one of these guys that's come through some great adversity, but has driven himself and just been really surrounded himself with people that have really helped him get to his next level. And I mean, this is a guy that I don't know. When you got into real estate, how old were you? 28?
27. Yep.
27. And when he got into real estate, he had a work ethic and just crushed it. And I remember just all these old veterans in real estate were going, how is he doing that? And he just had a great work ethic, but he had some great mentors. He had some great people in his life as well. And but it never ceased to amaze me how hard he was willing to work and how much he put into learning and cultivating and really honing his craft. And now he's an author. He is a podcast host. He has got a community called the Red Tie Community. The guy is just really brilliant in marketing. So red tie, bald guy with a red tie is his trademark. I mean, it's amazing to see what he's done with them. I mean, look at his hat, look at his shirt, look at. It's been how long that you've been dressing that way and doing that?
It's been 13 years. So I came out the gate in real estate with the brand ready in place kind of thing. And of course, I came over from the casino host days. So it was just perfect. I was just ready for it.
It was so amazing to watch you grow over the last 13 years. I've known you that whole time.
Yeah.
And it's I was telling you before we went live, I have always been impressed with the person that you are, not just what you've done. And as I look back, I'm privileged to know a little bit about your background, but let's talk about that because life has not always been this easy or this great for you. There's been a lot of challenges along the way. And let's just start with the book, The Stair. What's that about? And let's talk about that.
So kind of my backstory is I grew up in Central California in a beautiful place known as Bakersfield, California, or as us locals say, Bakersfield. And it's pretty much the armpit of California. So it's the farm fields. It's where all your gas and oil comes from. So the sky has this beautiful mixture and aroma of pesticides and oil, refinery smells, and maybe a meth lab somewhere out in Oildale, so it's beautiful. I like to bash on Bakersfield, but it's because I love it. Because it really is actually beautiful because the sun sets and all the chemical sky is just beautiful and orange and pink. So it's extraordinary. But that was my humble beginnings. And as the last name of Bakersfield depicts, it was a field. So one of the best ways to grow up was riding dirt bikes, which my stepdad got me into when I was about 6 years old. And so by the time I was 6, 7 years old, I'd just be wandering the fields of Bakersfield and learning those life lessons of, if you want to jump a dirt bike, you got to learn and improve and all that kind of stuff. So I was on my way to be a professional motocross racer. Dedicated to it. And, I had to have that work ethic to be a winner, and life was going great. And then when I was about 15, 16 years old, my mom started going to the doctors a lot. Things started getting kind of questionable. Like we couldn't go to the races all the time because there's doctor visits and whatnot. And sure enough, came to be that she had a tumor on her cervix, which became cervical cancer. And so I remember just kind of being at that point in life where, you're a few years away from being an adult, you're about to launch into adulthood, and all of a sudden your world gets rocked with something like that as a cancer diagnosis. And I was a mama's boy, so it just shattered my world. And so eventually she passed away when I was 16 years old, and rocked my world. I was a straight A student, on the verge of going pro as a motocross racer. And then I pretty much found myself in a very dark place. And that's what the book kind of talks about, is that transition into adulthood after that event.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I remember we shared. My mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was 15. She died when I was 17.
Yeah.
So we were around those same ages. I know what havoc it wreaked on me. What's the havoc? How did it play out in your life?
Well, for me, it rocked my world because, she was the foundation of everything, right? As most moms are in that type of a household. Your mom is the one that makes sure you take the trash out, do your homework, and loves you, but also will whoop you upside your head if you look at her funny. Like, I had a great mom, man. She had a wonderful sense of humor, and but she was firm, and she was that disciplinarian. And so if you did something off kilter, she lets you know about it. And so with that element removed, and then my stepdad was kind of what we call a CD temperament, as far as just being he was an engineer by trade. So, not very emotionally open per se, very technical minded, closed off the emotions. And so I'm obviously more of an empath, out there kind of guy. And so not having that foundation of, hey, I need to talk about this, I'm hurting, everyone just kind of retreated within themselves, including my 10-year-old sister at the time. And so I was just kind of lost with this big bundle of pain and emotions. So what do you do with that? And, with the motocross community, unfortunately, there's the partying aspect of it. And I had never done that before. But when I lost my mom to cancer, all of a sudden, everything's out the window, right? And then so I'm hurting, I'm feeling all this pain. What do I do with it? So, you got those buddies around you, go, well, I don't know how to counsel you, but why don't you drink this bottle of tequila? Why don't you take some of these psychedelics and expand your mind and go visit your mom on another realm? Like, okay, that sounds kind of fun. And so I did that for about 2 or 3 years, and just really was in a psychedelic haze, and just self-medicating, trying to bury that pain. And but that's when I started writing. So I think in your darkest moments, you find that light. And looking back now, I wouldn't change it for the world. But those dark times is what really gave me the strength to be the man that I am today.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I talk about the price paid. We've paid a price to be who we are today, and those experiences are the price we paid. But some of them, all it became was an expense, and some of us learned to take it into an investment where we could expect an ROI. What was the turning point where you took those experiences and made them an investment, expecting an ROI versus just another expense?
So when I was 19, 20 years old, that's when I started putting my thoughts down on paper. Just because I knew I was living a very wild life, and some of the stories were just extraordinary. Psychedelics are kind of more of a main topic nowadays, but back 20 years ago, nobody was talking about that, because they're like, oh, those are drugs, which they are. But man, that was some interesting, colorful times. And so I started documenting and writing those stories because it was just so wild. And then I'd read them to people, and they're like, that's bizarre. First of all, it's just weird. But through that's when that writing process started to develop. And then right about that time, I was just doing a lot of introspection, because those 2 or 3 years before that was just absolute chaos and pain, and living a life of sin, and not walking in the ways of God. And thankfully, I had someone in my corner that was a good, stable figure named Bob Swanson, and he was planting those seeds of the Christian life. And I was like, whatever. And then all of a sudden, God gets a hold of you. You're like, oh man. And so 20 years ago, September 21st of 2001, about 10 days after the Twin Towers came crashing down, that's when I gave my life to Christ. And that was the turning point, getting out of the dark pit. And that's when the escalation started to happen. It wasn't overnight, but it was definitely, I can look back at my life and say, okay, that was that defining moment that changed.
How hard was it to say yes to that invitation? I mean, we're both Christians, so we both understand that language, but how hard was it to say yes? Because you had to walk away from something that you had grown comfortable with, probably
Right.
to some degree, and that you were getting some relief from in your mind, right? It was serving you in some way. That's why you were doing it. But how hard was it to walk away from that?
Oh, it was very hard. And I would say that it was definitely not a lightning bolt moment. It was more of a refining process over 20 years now, right? So there's still that ability that God has where he takes you out of just the chaos of it. Um, but, as a dog returns to his vomit, right? So we go, oh, but that was kind of fun back there. And then so you go back and then he takes you up again and then you go back again. So it's been in this back and forth process. And but God's love is faithful and long suffering and patient and graceful. And so thank goodness for the mercy of God, because I don't know where I'd be today without it.
Yeah, amen. You talk about mercies. I remember a gentleman that he had done a lot of drugs in his life before, and he's just an interesting guy. And one day he says to me, he goes, Bob, he goes, the Bible says that God's mercies are made new every morning. And I'm like, yeah, that's that. And he goes, but it's morning somewhere every moment of the day in the world. So his mercies are made new every moment.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, that was pretty deep, but it's so true, right? I mean, God's mercies are never ending.
Yeah.
And his callings are irrevocable. So the calling on your life, you're using real estate and you're making money and you're doing this thing and you're raising your family and supporting all that stuff. But what's the calling on your life? Because I see it. And I think those that know you see a calling on you. Real estate's a great thing that you do, but the calling is what?
My calling in life is, I've been gifted with words, whether that's in writing or public speaking or my show or whatnot. And so what I've come to realize about my calling in life is that it's to inspire and encourage people to live their best lives. So I think that's why you and I have always kind of connected, because we just, birds of a feather flock together kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I love to make somebody feel better. And I do that in service. What's funny is the name John Butler actually means God's gracious servant. And so, I'm a servant of God's grace. And so if I can see someone and they're at a level 3 or a level 4, whether they're struggling with something or they're going through their own depression or whatnot, I'm very empathetic in the way that I can kind of sense the feelings of others. And then so if I can take them from that 3 or 4 level and bring them up to the next level, to a 6 or 7, that's what my life's all about, is to inspire and encourage people.
I love the mission. How does that play out with your family? I mean, it can be tough when you're trying to create a career and a business, and then you've got your family and you've got kids, and then you've got this calling. How do you incorporate and blend those?
That was really a big challenge, because when I started in real estate, my kids were, 2 or 3 years old. And honestly, I was not the best dad for the first 5 years of their lives, which are the most influential years of their lives. But I was in the stress of trying to provide for a family, build a career. And, I was very short, patient, and tempered. And so, you got all this stress dealing with short sales or whatever it was during that time frame. And then, you got a 2-year-old with a poopy diaper, wanting to spend time with you. And then this goes back to my own story with my dad. 2 weeks after I was born, my parents split up. And then I didn't have a dad for the first 5 years of my life until my stepdad came around about 5 or 6 years old. And I kind of shared with you his emotional temperament. So I didn't know how to be a dad for the first couple of years. But I would say over the past maybe 5 to 7 years, I've finally gotten into the groove of it. And I have a lot of fun with it now. But before, I was pretty frustrated being a dad. But now that I'm in this season and the kids are almost 16, 13, and 10, all boys, it's been a lot of fun riding the dirt bikes. And so what I like to do as a writer, or just, somebody that can see the metaphors or parables in life, is, as we go dirt bike riding, and there's always this moment when you go dirt bike riding with your kids, that as they're trying to hit the jump or they're trying to perfect whatever technique that they're trying to do, I like to use those life lesson moments and say, okay, well, you got to clear the runway, got to avoid the rocks and the ruts. You got to go straight and you got to hit that jump and you got to stay focused on the landing of it. And you start using these scenarios to teach them and to inspire and encourage them, right? So that's kind of been my philosophy. So one of the books I'll be working on in the next few years is something with like Moto Dad or something like that, just life lessons behind the bars of a dirt bike. So we'll see how
Oh,
that goes.
love that. Love
Yeah.
that. That'd be great. Hey, let's talk about the name of the book, The Stair. Where does that
Yeah.
come from? I mean, I know, but where does it come
Yeah.
from?
So the stair, the morning of June 5th, 1998 was when I walked in and saw my mom for the very last time. And anybody that's ever lost somebody from cancer or just, death in general, there's a certain stare that they have when I like to think that maybe they saw an angel appear through the sliding glass door. Um, it's a stare that just goes right to your soul. It's peaceful, it's distant, it's just something that you never forget. And
Mm.
so when I started writing my book, it was just, I always knew the title was going to be The Stair because it was that moment that my life just completely changed.
Mm.
And so it's a very deep thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could tap into your mom, what do you think she'd say about your life thus far?
I think she'd be very proud. I remember the final year of her life, we were talking about my friends and what she thought they would end up doing in life. And, and she pretty much nailed it. Like some of my other buddies, she's like, oh yeah, he's going to end up in jail. He's gonna be a firefighter or something like that. And she pretty much nailed all my friends. And so, but she knew that I've always had a business knack. And so she knew that I'd be a successful business person. And she used to joke that one day I'd write a book about my life just because I was kind of a drama queen growing up. So she always thought that that would be funny. And so sure enough, I wrote a book and became a successful businessman. But she kind of saw that pattern of behavior because when I was 4 years old, I was renting my GI Joes out for $1 a day at the playground. And I say renting, not selling, because I wanted the toy back, but I wanted to keep the dollar as well.
I
And
love it.
and then so she finally caught me after we went to McDonald's and we didn't have enough money because she was a single mom at the time. And I plop out all this cash out of my pocket and she thought I stole it. So I had to break and confess to her and say, no, I was renting my GI Joes out. So
Renting. Now I've heard, I mean, my son's, sold cookies, sold candy, everything in school. I've never heard anyone renting out their GI Joes.
yeah, you can play with it for the recess hour and I'll take your dollar, but I want my toy back. And kids are very
Reminds me,
grateful.
my granddaughter started painting, or my grandson started painting, and he made some paints, and people started buying them. And so his mom says, so you got to send these out, and he's like, "What? No, I'm not sending them out. They can print them out." So he just says, "No, you bought a painting." You bought the idea of the painting. You're going to print it out on your own computer. He's like, I don't want to part with this. This is my painting.
Yeah, he's licensing them. That's good.
I love it. I love it. John, you've met with so much success in real estate. Mm-hmm. But there was that learning curve and all that time and that commitment, and then you've seen the market dip and you've seen the market, rebound. And what do you think is the key to your success in real estate? Because you've been amazing. I mean, at 30, you were crushing it.
Yeah. So I tell my clients this all the time. For me, it's not about the transaction; it's about the relationships. And so whether it's a good market, bad market, sideways market, a foreclosure free fall, whatever it is, it's about connecting with people. And you know this better than anyone. It's about the relationships that you develop over the years. And you develop those relationships based on that being of service. So I believe in servant leadership. So you can lead someone through the process that they're wanting to go through, whether it's a real estate transaction or just a life transaction. But if you can be of service to them with whatever that might be, whether that's just a kind word. I mean, 90% of my job is counseling, right? So if they're going through a divorce or maybe they just lost, it's their parents' house and they passed away, it's like that sense of empathy comes through and I just connect with them. And it's about just being of service in whatever way I can on that way. So for me, real estate it's just a vehicle for my ministry of connecting with people. And it just happens to be a very financially rewarding type business. But I no longer want to do 100 transactions or be a millionaire real estate agent. To me, it's like I have everything I need, everything I want. My cup runneth over. So chasing deals, it's like, you hear these big teams like, oh, well, we got to crush it and we're going to do this. We're going to do 100 transactions, 200 transactions. When you keep chasing numbers, numbers never end. So when do you get to that point of success, right?
Yeah.
So learning that was pivotal for me in just my development. And so that's why, if I do 20 to 30 transactions a year, I'm golden. I'm good. I don't need to do the big out of the box kind of stuff because for me, it's about developing those relationships, which is what the Red Tie Community Show is all about.
Yeah.
So that's the most rewarding thing.
How do you measure success? I mean, at what point do you say I'm successful?
For me, it's success is relative and subjective, right? So people might look at me and go, "Oh, you're successful." Then I'll look at somebody else and say, "Oh, well, they're more successful." And so that's why I don't like getting into that realm of, okay, well, what is success? Yeah. Honestly, for success for me is just having the ability to do what I want when I want with the people that I want, right? So whether that's riding dirt bikes out in the hills with the kids or sitting at a lake with a close person, a friend or something like that, and just talking about life. Not having that burden of the corporate 9-to-5 job is successful in its own. So there's just a lot of ways where, to me, it's not a financial or transactional type measure. It's more of the ability to live my life the way that I want, when I want, and how I want. So.
Yeah, man. When you look back at your life, I'm 57. When you look back at your life and you say, man, all these things that, that I did that I could have done differently. And then you have to look and say, well, what was the return on investment of doing it wrong? Because there's a return on investment on that as well. When you look back, what are some things that you wish you had known or wish you had done? Because a lot of times we knew it, we just didn't do it. What are some things that you wish you had done earlier in your life?
I think just being more disciplined as far as of daily activities, because I am more of the outgoing, creative spirit, and so I don't like routine and whatnot. But the older I get, the more disciplined I get, and so there's value in that, of knowing when you're going to do something, how you're going to do it, and having that process and system in place. So I think learning systems earlier on would have been very helpful and beneficial. But there's also something to be said by flying by the seat of your pants and seeing what happens. But like you said, that return on investment of learning it the wrong way or the hard way. But I think systems are a good thing.
Let's talk about your Red Tie community. I think that's so cool. And you're explaining the little tiles behind you of each of your guests and things like that. And you've had almost 100 episodes now. Is that right?
Yeah.
So cool.
So I have two shows. One is the Red Tie Community Show, which is just basically anybody in my sphere of influence, my community. I've had the sheriff of Riverside County, Chad Bianco, on the show when he was running for sheriff. I've had the mayors, Temecula, Murrieta, Lake Elsinore mayors come on. But then I've also had hospice nurses. I even had Santa Claus on my show.
All right.
So it's just kind of neat to dive into people's stories and see what makes them tick, which again, that's why you and I have so much in common. We really just enjoy the story of people.
Right.
And then my second show is called the Signature Studio Spotlight Series, which is more kind of in the brokerage here at the office. We have 180 agents. So we put the spotlight on them, and I co-host that with Susan Ebert. And Susan's a lot of fun, as you know.
Yeah.
So she always makes for a good interview, and we just put the spotlight on somebody else and give them that platform to share their story. And
love it. Wow. Let's talk about your wife, because I got to know her a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, and just adorable and just very, very sweet. What's the thing that you fell in love with her about?
Her simplicity. She's a very simple, grounded person. Coming off the lifestyle that I had, where I'd moved over, 20 times within 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And she, when I met her, had lived in 2 houses, and her parents were still married. And, she was just that stabilizing force in my life.
Yeah.
I like to say that, sometimes there's frustration there because I just want to go full throttle and go explore the world and all this kind of stuff. And she's very cautious, very reserved, and all that. And so, but the best way I can put it is you can't drive a car with just the throttle. You got to have some brake to it too, right? So
Amen.
she's been that stabilizing force in my life. Um, Sometimes it's frustrating because you want to go further down the road or faster or whatever, but she's like, what about this? Oh, so,
How does she hold that position? Because typically one of those wins, right? And
yeah.
more often than not, it's the person going full throttle that wins. So in the battle, not for the best most of the time, but for the battle. How has she been able to temper that in you?
The silent treatment, I don't know. uh, she's, like I said, very quiet, reserved type person, but I think when you meet your life partner, your wife, your spouse, and it's on that deeper spiritual level, the day-to-day activities might be fuzzy and whatnot, but there's always that kind of grounded force that connects you guys. And so, I'll have my frustrating moments, and I'm sure I frustrate her. But in the end, it just makes for a great story. So,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Makes for a great story.
always makes for a great story.
Wow.
Yeah, I have that resistance. I think resistance is an important thing, especially
Yeah.
for an artist. You need those kind of resisting moments.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I always talk about, a match doesn't get lit without friction. A knife doesn't get sharpened without something harder than itself. So, I mean, we need to appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh, but man, in the moment, it's hard to
It's feel
appreciate
good.
friction. Yeah. What do you think if I would take your kids aside and say, "Hey, tell us about your mom and dad. Tell us about their relationship." What do you think they would say?
They'd probably say that I'm the fun dad, and they would say that my wife's very anxious about them because she sees the world differently. There's expansive type people and there's restrictive type people, and so she sees the world as dangerous. With technology and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
She worries a lot. It's the mother's worry, right? So she doesn't want them to go to the park by themselves because they're going to get kidnapped by ISIS or get the Rona or whatever, right? So she just sees the world in that kind of framework. Whereas I'm like, well, if they take you, can I have all your stuff? That kind of thing. I just think it's good for young men to get into a little bit of mischief. Not dangerous kind of stuff, but you got to figure out how to work your way out of those things and stand on their own 2 feet. So um, I don't know what they would say, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a dichotomy there. So
I asked a woman and a man, husband and wife. I was at their house and we were standing around the island in their kitchen, and we're talking. And their 15-year-old daughter was there, and I said, "So, what do you think about your mom and dad? I mean, what's the thing that stands out most to you about mom and dad?" And the mom and dad are like all ears. They're like, "Wow, we want to hear this too."
yeah.
And she says that they'll always make it. Like no matter when they've argued or fought or no matter what, they will make it work.
That's awesome.
And I said, wow, if more parents could make that statement, if the kids would make that statement about their parents, that's pretty powerful. And I mean, I remember the mom and dad were just like, really? That's amazing. And I'm always just fascinated by, the kids see things so differently than we see them. And we think we're failing miserably in, something, and all of a sudden they pop up with something like that. And you go, wow, I actually did better than I thought I did. So I love that. I love that answer. As we wrap this up, I want people to get to know how they can get your book, The Stair. It's on Amazon, correct?
It is. Yep. So if you put in The Stair by John Butler, that should pop up. And I think he
Okay.
had a graphic on your Facebook. So if you see the
Yep.
one with the eyes and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
looking back, marketability wise, I probably should have named it something different because when I tell people it's The Stair, they always go, like stairs? I'm like, no, like The Stair. And so anytime you have to explain your marketing to somebody, then it kind of loses that.
Yeah, it's that unpacking that, when I
Yeah.
say mastering your inner game, they go, oh, so like, and I go, no,
Yeah.
you gotta unpack it for them. So I totally get that. John, as we go forward, when you look at what's ahead, how old are you now?
I'm going to turn 40 in August.
Yeah, you're a
So this
young.
is a big one for me.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
halfway point.
I remember 40.
That was a long time ago.
Way back then, 17 years ago. But as you look forward now, what are the things that are compelling you to move forward and that are keeping you on task?
Real estate is always an interesting business just because it changes by the hour sometimes. So as far as the business aspect, I'll be going full throttle on that, just like I have been for 13 years. But for me, this most important part of the season is definitely going to be about the kids, because with them being at those crucial moments of, almost 16, 13, and 10,
Yeah.
this next decade is going to be big, right? So I want to make sure that they transition into adulthood smoothly, that they find those inner characteristics that are important to their path in life. So really my focus isn't on myself for this next decade. It's just purely on the kids, and then the surrounding relationships as I go through life. This past Friday, I had a beautiful moment attending Tom Carter's funeral. And for those who don't know who Tom Carter is, he was a title rep in the real estate industry and very successful and all that. But after sitting there for 2.5 hours, not once did people get up and talk about how many title transactions he did. They didn't talk about how much money he had. What they kept coming back to was how he was that influential person in their life that either encouraged them to move closer to God, or was that friendly voice or that helpful hand. Those are the things that are important. It's not about the transactional success or the financial thing. So that was very inspiring and had a big ripple effect on my life, just hearing all that. So kind of put that into crystal clear vision.
Yeah, that'll do it quicker than anything else, won't it?
Yeah. One of the best things one of my teachers ever did is he said, I want you to write your obituary and basically reverse engineer your life. Right.
Yeah.
That always stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah. Love it. I love it, man. You're an inspiration to a lot of people, and your calling is evident. So going forward, what's the thing that you need most in order to accomplish the calling?
For me, I think my greatest legacy will be, besides my family, but my greatest legacy will be my words. And so, for example, I had to pull this out here. So I've been journaling for 20 years.
Wow.
And so this is just one binder of words that I've been keeping for 20 years. And so to answer your question, what do I need for this next phase of life is going back to that discipline and those systems and getting these words out there, because I have this treasure trove of some brilliant, beautiful gems and diamonds to share with the world. But like a creative person, you're off to the next thing, right? So now I need to disseminate that and get that out there. And so I have a new social media campaign that'll be coming out this summer for my 40th birthday called Written by Bald Guy Red Tie, which will basically be those pieces of writing, and it's going to be combined with animation and other artistic endeavors with other artists. And then it'll be like a voiceover of me reading my writing and stuff like that. And then, so it's pretty cool. I'll send you a clip, a little sneak peek.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Very, very cool. I appreciate that. Flo, I think you had a comment or a statement or an aha moment or a question, maybe even.
I did. Thanks for sharing, John. I seem to have resonated with your love language. Mine is also service. What would you say your best connection story would be?
So I was a waiter in Caro's up in Bakersfield, California, and I was about 20 years old. And every day at 4 o'clock, this green Cadillac would pull up with an older couple in it. And they were probably in their 80s at the time, like 85, 86, 87 kind of thing. And the husband was a machine gunner in World War II, so he was completely deaf. He had hearing aids, but couldn't hear worth a darn, right? And he had this brittle old, his wife was, very brittle, small, maybe 85 pounds, and she'd have a walker. So the Cadillac would pull up in the handicap spot, And then it would take him about, 10, 15 minutes to walk 200 feet to the door. And so I knew I always had this window of time. And, the wife's doing this thing with the walker, and then, the husband's smoking a cigarette because he's a chain smoker. It was just crazy that he lived that long. And, but he would always order the same exact thing every single day for as long as I knew him. It was poached eggs, 2 slices of white toast, and some fruit with bacon. And so what the cook at the time would do, we would see him pull up, and then I would give him the signal, and he would get the food ready. And so by the time they got to their table, the food was already on their table, exactly what they wanted. And I'd open the door and greet them, and make them just feel like royalty. He was the one that gave me some of the best words of advice. He said, he pointed to me and he goes, "John, you know what they say about your golden years? Being of old age kind of thing." I go, "No, what?" He said, "It's a bunch of crap. Your golden years are right now." And he points to me being, in my early 20s. And he said, "Enjoy every moment of it." I said, "Okay." So I wrote that story for them. And then when they passed away later that year, the family found the story, because I just wrote the story about them then and gave it to them. And then so when they're clearing out their parents' home, they found the story. And so they read it at their funeral and stuff like that. And so that was just really cool to capture the essence of their parents and basically immortalize it in that story.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for asking.
Well, John, once again, how do people get in touch with you? How would you like to interact with them? We're going to make you a member of the Facebook group, Next Level by Association. So you'll be in there. People can connect with you there. But how do you like people to connect with you? And what's the next thing you would like them to do?
So one of the things that I'm on Facebook all the time. So if you go to facebook.com/baldguyredtie, that's where you can find me. Just type in bald guy red tie and pretty much anything, you'll come across my stuff. But if they can, go on YouTube and like and subscribe to youtube.com/baldguyredtie, that'd be kind of cool. Awesome. And as far as interacting with people, text, Facebook Messenger, smoke signals, whatever it is, I'm very responsive and communicative. So
yes, you are. Yes, you are. And you've been that way all along. So I've remained a fan of your consistency in how you live your life. So thank you for
Bobby.
Hey, brother, I appreciate you, love you, and look forward to some more connection. And so look for the invite today on the Facebook group, so you can accept that. And that being said, John, appreciate you and appreciate your testimony.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, brother.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell. To find out more, call us at 949-542-6398. That's 949-542-6398. Or you can find more information on our website at everythingnextlevel.com. That's everythingnextlevel.com.